Final Fantasy VII remakes are a little bit like buses. You wait 23 years for one and then two come along at once, or at least 12 months apart. It's only been a year since we saw the first chapter of the Final Fantasy VII remake on the PS4 and the Pro, but now we get an enhanced PlayStation 5 version that offers some additional benefits using that power of the next generation console, and it is completely free to PlayStation 4 owners, unless of course you held out for that PS Plus version, which means you're going to have to pay for this upgrade. But what are those upgrades, you may ask? Well, additional texture materials, additional assets as well, additional effects, and much better lighting and change light sources. There's a great shot here of Cloud's face, as you can see that improvement to subsurface scattering along his skin, the improvements to depth of field in the background, and that self-shadowing of his hair and that ambient occlusion around his face and hairline falling onto his face. All of that adds much better materials and objects in the game in the already impressive PS4 Pro version. But also additional light sources and changes to those. That green neon light in the background is still there on the PS5, but it's now washed out by additional shadow and a yellow light added in. You can see that texture details and the light differences in the background of the pavement, the improved ambient occlusion, the higher resolution depth of field in the background, giving everything a cleaner and sharper image quality than it did on the PS5. And it also comes with two modes, the graphics mode and also the performance mode. The performance mode does all this and more, which I've not come to just yet, at 60 FPS. And this means you get a much sharper and cleaner image, but it does come out at the same resolution as the PS4 Pro. 2688 by 1512, but it can drop as low as 2304 by 1296, but I only caught that once in heavy battle. 99% of my counts all came out at that peak of 1512p, which is what it hit on the PS4 Pro, which again, that could dynamically scale lower than that. So you're not only getting much better assets, different and improved light sources, some additional visual effects, but it's doing it all at twice the frame rate. Rather than 33 milliseconds per frame, the PS5 only gets 16 milliseconds, meaning everything is not only cleaner and sharper, it's a damn sight smoother.
Watch the tail! You don't want to be hit by that laser! Huh?
As the Square Enix team moved away from their in-house proprietary Luminous engine they used for Final Fantasy XV, the remake here is powered by Unreal Engine 4, and as such they can use fog volumes as they ramp these up on the PlayStation 5. But these elements, like screen space reflections or cube maps, are all improved on PS5 with higher resolutions, usage and quality. The volumetric areas all sample light and include light bounce or GI. See here as that yellow light is sampled on the right and it's missing on the left. This adds additional depth and enriches many shots in gameplay. Some areas have a mix, with Pro having a volume here which it doesn't on the PS5, but the general rule is that these volumetric sources are used far more frequently on PlayStation 5, to a higher quality and density than before. A great example of this comes after we destroy the Mako power plant. As they escape through the underground tunnels, we can see all of these dense fog volumes hanging in the air, which just enriches the cinematic quality of these sequences and the gameplay. They simulate atmospheric scattering and provide a physically based lighting improvement to the visuals, where dirt and other air particulates float and create denser areas. Once light is sampled through these, it causes a light prism, and light scatters within them, emitting a soft, thick glow to scenes. This also enhances materials and the cinematography of shots, giving a richer and more vibrant look, with the Pro version looking a little flat here. As they are frustum aligned, the density they offer always looks impressive, and they also use Unreal Engine's TA8 reconstruction to deliver the stability and motion these volumetrics require. But all of these things combine to enhance the visual quality. The better quality textures, materials, the light sources and those volumetrics can change many sequences, including looking up at this Mako tower with those burnt oranges makes the whole thing more dramatic.
Please leave your residences at once. I repeat. This is an alert from the
Man,
Emergency
what a
Operations
mess.
Center.
Now, another area that's been improved is mipmaps and texture details. This infamous door is now completely fixed, loading in all the details so everything looks cleaner and sharper. And that's because games are always memory limited. You're constantly trying to fix things in and take things out of RAM. And therefore, running this on the PS4 Pro, they had 5.5 GB of RAM, and mipmaps are like LOD. They use lower quality textures and materials the further away from the camera you are, just like geometry of objects. You draw lower qualities and you stage them throughout the game game and you stream them in when you need. Running this on the PS4 means that they had to cut that back, and that means the optimization stage where they go around and play these into certain sections, they missed a lot of these textures out, or they left them at the lower quality to make sure that there was a good diversity of textures throughout the title. And you can see this throughout the game, which now loads in the best quality early on. And this combined with those additional light sources, this shot here is perfect, showing you that the background, the face of the characters, the hair, look at Cloud's face, look how he stands out, look at the lighting on his arms, his face, his hair, all of that is because it's running those additional light sources now in gameplay that it couldn't run before. And that's how cinematics look so much better, because they run those in the cinematics and now they can run them in the game, therefore you get much better quality. Combine this with those improvements to the textures as I zoom in on the ground, look how muddy and flat everything is. Hardly any normal maps, losing all that detail, texture filtering is low, and the whole game looks very blurry throughout, and there's certain sections where it looks even worse. And this isn't really affected by resolution, as I say. When you bump up to the 4K version here, 3840 by 2160 on the PS5, it is 30 FPS. It doesn't look that much better, and it's not worth the increase in my mind in terms of the resolution over the performance you get from 60 FPS. So it's much cleaner and sharper. And then in addition to all these things, it fixes all those LOD pop-in. So on the left hand side you can see characters popping in right in front of you, the bike here as it comes around the corner, people just popping in all across the screen. All of that doesn't happen on the PS5 because it's got the additional GPU load. It can keep that GPU fed with data, and it can stream all these things in just in time as you run through the world. It makes everything more consistent, more believable, and certainly more enjoyable because you can see a lot of these details. The assets are cleaner, it's much smoother at 60 FPS, and you don't get half the pop-in. And that brings us to the last section, and it's really the last section because there's not a lot to discuss here. It does have two modes, 60 FPS as you can see here compared to the 30 of the Pro, and it's a lock solid 60. There's no dips, nothing happens at all, it just stays consistent throughout. Perfectly optimized to run at those levels, and that dynamic scaling makes sure that if it does need to, and like I say I only caught 1 point, it never drops below. But then again, the PS4 Pro was always a perfectly solid 30 FPS, and as was the PS4. It was a perfectly optimized title to run on the hardware it needed to, and no matter what you're doing in combat, cutscenes, running through the world, everything performs beautifully. And that's exactly the same as that 30 FPS mode. Again, 4K it may be, it's a lot sharper, you can certainly notice some sections, but for me it still doesn't make a significant improvement, dropping half the frame rate down for that improvement to visual quality. Some may prefer it if you are very close to the screen or you sit and play on a desk, then potentially it makes sense there, but for me I would always choose that performance mode over the 30 FPS mode for this game, because the visual difference isn't enough for me to warrant that sacrifice in performance. And the final piece that really stands out is loading. It can take around 30 seconds or even more sometimes on the PS4 Pro to load a section, and you can do this all in less than 2 seconds on the PS5. And slowly but surely all these little things start to add up. You end up with a package that is much better than the previous generation version, and that was brilliant all on its own. They may be small, but things like that subsurface scattering improvements, the materials, the better textures, the additional light sources, the volumetrics, and the overall artistic changes to that visual construction of the title, utilising the hardware and the engine better, deliver what is an impressive update for free on the new generation of consoles. You can't grumble at that. So it's now most certainly the best place to play Final Fantasy VII Remake. Until the next one.
Wait! I know that.
Another one bites the dust, but if you like tech and games, then keep it IGN, and I'll catch you on the next one.